Hello, and welcome to the GPCA Podcast. I'm your host, James Brimm, Executive Advisor at SIPCHEM. Today we are joining you at this year's Annual GPCA Forum. The key narrative for the forum is chemistry in action. Today, industry leaders are gathered here exchanging thought leadership on shaping a sustainable future. I'm joined today by the Executive Vice President of LG Petrochemical Company. It is my intense pleasure to introduce Mr. Hur Sung Woo.
Thank you very much, James. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So welcome to this year's GPC Annual Forum. I believe there are a few firsts we should address. This is your first time in Saudi Arabia, first time at this year's forum, and first time for the forum being in Riyadh. That's amazing. What are some of your impressions so far, and what are some of the key takeaways from the speeches and presentations that you've heard today?
Since the COVID travel restrictions has lifted, I've been traveling globally to meet with the industry leaders as well as the government leaders. And this is kind of my last stop in Middle East. And in this forum this morning, I heard the same thing that I heard in North America, as well as in Europe, as well as in Asia, which is global leaders are focused on climate change and trying to address the real issue of carbon reduction and circular economy. And I think I'm glad that Middle East is also on board with respect to that area. And I think that globally, my takeaway is that everybody is really focused on carbon reduction and circular economy. And we're trying to address the same issues and concerns. So I think that's one of my key takeaways.
Well, that's really interesting. I think you'll be joining us in a leadership dialogue tomorrow about these opportunities that you mentioned, turning the ESG theory into action. How do you approach ESG in your company, and how has ESG been addressed in South Korea in the chemical industry?
LG Chem is a leading chemical company in Korea. We are working on actually three areas. One is advanced materials. That's the materials that go into battery manufacturing, and that is part to electrification and in transportation. And secondly, we're working on maximizing recycle. We produce a lot of plastics that we want to maximize recycle, reuse of it to make sure that they don't end up in oceans and solid waste in grounds. The second area, and one of the largest area that we focused on, is CO2 emissions reduction in our petrochemicals facilities. One way to address that is clean hydrogen deployment. And I think the Middle East will play a key role in that because it has an ability to produce blue hydrogen through carbon sequestration and storage. And then also it's got abundant natural resources in terms of solar energy that can produce green hydrogen. And we are looking Middle East as one of those sources to decarbonize not only our company in Korea, but also the industry itself in Korea. Korea is a manufacturing-centric economy with a lot of import of fossil fuels, and that economy has to transition to renewable base over time. In order for that industry to stay competitive, we have to deploy clean energy that is cost-effective, and it has to be imported from countries like regions like Middle East or in Australia and Chile, where there is abundant solar as well as wind natural resources. And we are looking at those countries to deploy this clean energy so that we can actually decarbonize. And the only way we can achieve the low cost clean energy deployment in Korea is through scale up and technical innovation. And we want to be part of that process.
In tomorrow's session, we'll expect to hear from you and the panelists on the importance of embedding the ESG across the entire value chain. How is this done effectively, and what are some of the pitfalls for companies that look to be a first mover?
I think the sustainability has to be a core value of the company. It cannot be just a simple priority. We in LG, our new CEO, Mr. Shin Hak-chul, who came to LG Chem about 4 years ago, has really established sustainability as a core value of the company. And I think it's melded into the fabric and the philosophy of the company, that everyone from the top to front line is really embracing sustainability, and we're doing everything we can to reduce carbon emissions and also reduce the waste that's going into oceans and land. So it has to be a core value of the company. And once you set that value, you have to have a clear goal and roadmap to achieve it. And it's going to take time, but we have to actually start quickly. We cannot just sit on and wait and do nothing. We got to take into action. I think the GPCA's key, the dialogue that's going to happen this week is chemistry in action. I think what I want to emphasize is that chemical industry is a technically driven industry. We've made the fossil-based feedstock, and we make many of the products that are useful in our daily lives. And it's through technical innovation that we were able to get to this efficient at delivering those things that we need at cost. And renewables, one of the challenges is that it's going to cost us more. And until we get to a point where we can actually reduce cost over time through technical innovation and scale up, and that's what we need to start doing. So I'm glad that GPCA is focused on chemical industry to take that action, and I do see industry leaders taking real action rather than just sitting back and wait it to happen. So I'm glad to see that.
Yes, I think it's sitting back and waiting is the danger, and also having the government support. Can you tell us a little bit about, I have a two-part question for you. A, government and regulatory role, providing a strong policy and the regulatory support for ESG, and B, how is the ESG standards and regulations being approached in South Korea?
So to answer your second question, I think the government of Korea has set out a clear goal of deploying cleaner energy and also looking at ways to reduce waste in plastics. And although they set a target, there's a lot of engagement and discussion that is happening. I must say it's going to take a bit longer for those regulations, the policies get clear and the regulations removed, so that we can actually move on as an industry and with the government at pace. But I think it's headed into the right direction. I think one of the examples is Korea government has set an ambitious goal of deploying cleaner hydrogen in the country, and I think we're just waiting for that final bit of regulation to get announced, so that we can actually move on with those type of investments with the clarity. I think that's a key. But I must add, though, this is a global issue, not just a Korea issue. As I said earlier, in order for Korea industry to stay competitive, it needs cost competitive, cleaner energy from overseas, because it will be in the form of imports. And we need to work across different governments to drive the regular dialogue and engagement to allow the supply side as well as the demand side to come back with the cohesive policy that will drive this industry. Just to simply put, the IRA Act in US is allowing cleaner hydrogen to be produced at cost, essentially, with a subsidy. And what that means is, a lot of producers will go to US to produce cleaner hydrogen rather than alternative countries. And I think everybody needs to do that in various countries to meet our global challenge, and it cannot just happen in US. So I think the IRA Act or similar act in different countries will allow the industry to put money behind the sustainability goals, because as a business we have to make money, and in order to make money, it will happen eventually, and we will need that subsidy eventually once we reach the cost at scale. But in the interim, we need that government support for us to be able to enable this industry to hold.
Yes. I guess in light of the business's need to make money, I would like to link back to ESG creating value for chemical and petrochemical companies. We know that early movers are set to reap the long-term benefits. Can you tell us your view, or what are some of the value enablers that ESG compliance helps to create, and how does this support companies' competitive advantage?
I think I'll give you an example of LG Chemical. So LG Group in early 1990s has started putting a lot of money in research and development for electric vehicle batteries. And this is the time when everybody was really excited about Sony Walkman. And Mr. B.M. Gu, who is the LG Group owner at the time, saw the future of EV batteries and started putting a lot of resources behind research and development. And that particular effort over 20 plus years has really materialized at the beginning of this year, when we actually IPO'd our battery business as an independent company, LG Energy Solutions. LG Energy Solutions is now globally number 2 EV battery manufacturing company. When it was IPO'd, it was the second largest IPO in Korean Stock Exchange with a value over 100 billion. And that early 20 somewhat years ago, Mr. Gu saw the future of the EV battery technology, and he started putting money into that research and development, which yielded this huge opportunity here for LG Chem. And I think a lot of clean tech is in the similar faith and space at the moment. I think as a business leader, we have to take a bit of risk and see the future, and we have to actually start moving into that direction. Otherwise, this will not happen. So I think we need to have that foresight, as well as a bit of taking that risk. But early movers will take advantage of that in the future. But if you stay behind, it will be very difficult today to start an EV battery company.
Yes, I agree. So maybe in conclusion, I want to thank you, Mr. Song, for joining us today. A few takeaways that I've captured are really around, I think, 3 points. One, the key of collaboration and coordination across the entire value stream. 2, the importance of government involvement to drive the policy direction. And 3, to your last point about taking the risk and being proactive. This was a fascinating interview for us. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. And to our listeners, stay tuned to the GPCA podcast for the next episode as we join you at this year's 16th Annual GPCA Forum.